Good morning. I'm News Center Maine's Don Kerrigan. Welcome to this week's Political Brew. We are joined by intrepid analysts Betsy Sweet, Democratic activist, Phil Harriman, longtime Republican analyst and former state senator. Thank you, folks, for being here with us.
Good morning, everyone.
A lot happening in Maine this week, a lot happening nationally. Let's look at Maine first. Governor Mills may have decided to spend some of her political capital by proposing to change Maine's abortion law, to essentially, again, allow a form of late-term abortion in some cases with medical approval. Betsy, I'll start with you. I don't know if you're part of the inner circle on this, but is this a good move?
Yeah, it's absolutely a good move. I mean, we have to think, people who have abortions very late in their pregnancies are making a decision, and they're very, very rare, but they're very awful. It's either because they have more information about the medical condition of their child or their circumstances, so they're very rare. So this, and during the press conference, the woman who spoke about her own experience from Maine, who had to go to Colorado to get, so this should really be between a doctor and a woman, a doctor and the patient, and this is not political capital. 70 to 80% of all Mainers, all political stripes, all religions support the right for a woman to choose abortion. And so for us to think that, it's political capital inside the parties, but it is not political capital with the population. And so I think this is a smart move. It's important to do. I don't think it's politics. I think for a lot of people, you can talk about it as a political thing. This is about women's health and women's lives. We should be today celebrating the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, the constitutional right. Instead, 1 out of 3 women in this country are now not able to access abortion in their own state. And so tonight, lots of people are lighting a candle to say a fire's still there. We're going to make this happen.
All right. Phil, your take on this?
I see it very differently than Betsy. During the campaign, the governor made it very clear that she was not going to change existing Maine law. She was going to protect the viability definition. So I think this is spending some of her capital, and that's her choice. She got elected, and that's her opportunity. So the discussion is going to be important. The details of how this process will work is why we have a legislative process, and people are going to be welcome to testify and get into these details.
And we have some Republicans already, and the Catholic Diocese calling this extreme. Is this headed for a big political fight? And obviously Democrats are the majority, and if they're all on the same page, then they can pass it. But is this headed for a big fight, Phil?
Well, fight, I think, is the wrong word. This is a very sensitive and important issue, and the circumstances that Betsy referenced, a woman from my hometown in Yarmouth, if you know that story, you would say, yeah, she needed to have those services. So I hope the legislature will look at this as an opportunity to define these circumstances as best as they can than to have a fight over political affiliation, because I think you'll find there's probably as many Democrats who are uncomfortable with this as it stands today as there are Republicans.
Well, and I would say the opposite. I would say there's many Republicans who are on the side of this bill as Democrats. So I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think it's a health issue, and I can't forget that the absolute question here is who decides, right? Should this be between a woman and her doctor and her family, or should this be up to politicians who don't know the stories, don't know the circumstances, and don't have any experience with it? That's the question. That is the key question in this debate that everyone loses sight of.
Sure, I would agree with you, Betsy. The definition of doctor is is it a medical professional or a doctor with the skill set in the diagnosis? Those are the types of things the legislature needs to sort out.
We shall see that unfold. Another big issue, clearly, that's going to be debated in the months ahead in the legislature is the child protective system in the state of Maine through the Department of Health and Human Services. Republicans made it clear they would like to separate the Office of Child and Family Services that deals with that from DHHS and make some other changes as well. Phil, I'll start with you. Do you think that's the right move at this point, and do you think there could be enough support to make that happen?
I actually would defer to Betsy, because changing the bureaucratic organizational chart isn't going to influence the outcomes for these children. I think I applaud Bill Diamond and others who are focusing on this. I think we all want him to succeed. How we do it and implement it, to me, is more about what's the most effective way to get the results, as opposed to reorganizing the state bureaucratic organizational chart.
And Betsy, this was tried last year, but it got defeated more or less on long party lines.
I think the question is how, right? And again, just like the last discussion we had, the question is how do we protect these kids? Mm-hmm. And I think absolutely there's clearly problems in our system. We clearly need to get at the bottom of that, of how we do that. But I also say, and this I've said to my Republican friends, we have to go backwards too, because it's not just at the point where someone's really in danger and is going to be murdered. We have to go back to all the supports that are in place to keep those kids healthy. And sadly, many Republicans have been on the wrong side of those issues for the last 10 years. And so it's like to come in and say, we're going to do this at the very end, it's not going to address the problem, which I think every single person in Maine would say, my God, yes, we have to protect these kids. So I'm not sure that rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic is the thing that's going to make the difference. We really have to go look at root causes, and we have to really provide supports and help to people to make sure that kids don't end up in this situation.
I think we just agreed there.
Write that down. So that it looks like a petition's been submitted, maybe we'll have a referendum on this question dealing with car repairs and the right to repair. First of all, Betsy, I don't know if you have any personal experience with this problem, but
I drive old cars, I do.
There we go. Is this something that needs a legislative action? Is it something that needs to go to the voters in a referendum?
Well, you would hope not, right? We'd hope we would see the problem, but I think anybody who has a car that's not brand new knows this problem, right? You go to your mechanic, they can't get access to the information that they need. They don't have the little plug-in thing that tells and says attention needed, right? They don't have it. So it's ridiculous, in my view, that we need a referendum on this, but I think we do because, and again, I think it speaks to, I'm all about the larger issues today, but it speaks to the larger issues of how few car manufacturers there are. We're seeing the consolidation, and we're seeing more and more of big monopolies of people who own of the companies that own cars, and they're loath to give out their information because they don't want that our little mechanic on the side of the road, on the side at the corner, to have access to their information because they want to have the monopoly not only in selling the cars but on fixing them.
Yeah. Phil?
I'm surprised this went through the petition gathering process. I could see it if they'd already tried in the legislature and it failed. So little inside baseball this morning, that petition will go before the legislature, right, and they could adopt it into
right,
Maine law, and perhaps
right,
that's what will happen.
The Biden documents situation in Washington continues to unfold. Betsy, I'll start with you. First of all, it seems amazing that we're here. And how is this going to get straightened out?
Well, I think we have to apply the same standards to Biden as we're applying to Trump. I could certainly, we could tease apart, the different ways that they've handled it, and some trying to hide it, some not, but whatever. We clearly they both need to be looked at, with the same kind of, same rigor. And
is it just a distraction? Is this going to have any impact on Biden running for re-election if he says he's going to?
Oh, maybe. I think that the capacity of us to take issues that are somewhat bureaucratic and in the long term meaningless and avoid things like climate change and the economy and no middle class anymore, right, is astonishing. So maybe this will derail that. I hope that we will take care of it. We will put aside, clearly we need a better process. Somebody somewhere in the documents archives world needs a better process, and I hope that is what it's going to come out.
Phil?
Well, this is another opportunity for Betsy and I to agree that the same standard should be held for President Trump as President Biden. There is a lot of talk out there of a two-tiered system of justice. We're going to find out exactly where that lies, but I think there is a distinction. The President Trump had opportunity with the documents he had to declassify them. Vice President Biden did not. And so my question is, where was the chain of custody at the archives? These documents were classified, and therefore there should have been a trail.
One might also say, why are either one of these guys taking them home with them?
Well, exactly. And right, and Trump had the opportunity that he was asked to return them and refused. So that's a big difference too.
Yeah,
so
brought in the FBI and all
right,
of that.
Exactly.
I'll take a position here, the controversy over raising the debt ceiling. Phil, you're a financial guy. Is this a real threat to the American economy at the moment?
Oh, I think it is a threat to the future of America, but to play games with the debt ceiling is not in our best interest. today. This is money we've already spent. And for our viewers to know, we don't pay our mortgage payment in America. We borrow more money. We don't pay off the debt. We go to the credit card, get a cash advance, and pay the interest. That long term is not sustainable. But for us to default today on that obligation is in no one's best interest. I think the Republicans need to use this opportunity to draw a line and say, going forward, no more omnibus budget bills. We're going to have hearings. You're going to see who votes up or down for various spending levels, and let's begin to make 1 + 1 = 2.
And should President Biden, the Biden administration, be willing to negotiate on this?
They should, for the long-term interests of America and its citizens, not a political party, for the future of our economy and our country.
Betsy.
Well, I think in the long term in terms of going forward, but I think right now, using this as a political chit, this is all about McCarthy and what he promised to the people who finally elected him. And so to play games with this is very dangerous, and it's a little disingenuous because $7 trillion of this debt was under Trump. So this is like they're trying to make it out like this is a big Democratic spending thing. No, this has come, and the biggest adding to our debt was under Bush, $23 trillion. So it's not a partisan thing. It's how we do our finances. Now, should we look at how we do our finances going forward? Maybe. But should Biden now negotiate cutting Medicare and Social Security and our pensions to a bully of McCarthy to say, I'm going to do this, or we're going to shut down and really hurt, as Phil said, we're going to hurt our economy, the global economy? No, I don't think he should budge there.
Should we? Is this an antiquated thing at all? Should we still have this debt ceiling that has to be revisited every couple of years?
Well, I think if we did what Phil said and actually talked about, had upfront bill budget hearings and that kind of stuff, we could, ideally, right, the system itself would do that, right? We wouldn't have to do this artificial thing.
Right.
But
So the governor in Maine increased spending $1 billion. She had to put that budget in front of the legislature, and they're going to spend the next 6 months going through every dollar and craft it in their own image and send it back to her for her signature or a veto. Well, why aren't we doing that in Washington?
yeah.
A good question. And speaking of other things happening in Washington, the controversy over newly elected Representative Santos continues. He's being put on committees, even though...
So what do you think about this, Phil?
Even though there's Republicans as well as some Democrats questioning whether he ought to be there. Now there's an allegation that he was in some kind of a drag show in Brazil. It just seems one more piece of wackiness, Phil.
Wow. Wow. On a Sunday morning, standing up and defending Republicans is not easy. Here's my philosophy. He got elected. He raised his right hand. He was given a seat. He should be giving assignments, but there should also be a House Ethics Committee investigation and let them get to work and determine his fate.
Okay.
Yeah, and he should be seriously investigated because there really isn't one... There's not too much that's true about what this guy has said, and he got elected on false premises. I think what's interesting is, Kevin McCarthy can't afford to lose one vote. So it doesn't matter what he did. He's going to fight to the death to keep that guy there because electing a Republican in New York is hard anyway,
right.
But to elect this guy, so it has nothing to do with his integrity. And as a comedian said the other day, to be known as the liar in Washington, whoa, that is a really high bar.
Okay, winners and losers. Betsy, you first.
My winner is Lisa Saca Basin, and the people have put together this incredible Wabanaki Cultural Center in Bangor and Youth Center, where people will get to be able to experience and know more about our tribes and our indigenous people in Maine. It's a wonderful thing. They've been working so hard to make this happen, and it looks like it's about ready to go online. They're my winners. The loser of the week for me is the landlords and developers who are causing the 25% rise in evictions that we've seen, so that people in Maine, it just exacerbates our housing crisis, and instead of helping us and figuring out how to fix this problem, they're just making it worse. They're my losers.
And Phil.
My loser of the week is the president's press secretary, Pierre. She's obviously gotten into a snarl with the media on both sides of the political aisle over these files. She's got to regain her footing, or her career may be in jeopardy. My winner of the week is Lynn Cressy from Brunswick, who owns a barbershop called Cut Above. She offers to cut people's hair and trim beards based on their ability to pay.
Wow, how about that?
Really?
Thank you both very much. We'll be back with more Political Brew next week. News Center will be back right after